What is up everyone, it's Saber here and welcome to another Naruto What If you end up liking the video, please consider subscribing. It's free and you can take it back at any time and it really helps me out, and this is my main channel, so if you're interested in what if Naruto had the DNA of every member of the Akatsuki, or what if Naruto was neglected and joined the Straw Hat Pirates, go check out my main channel. And with all of the YouTube formalities out of the way, let's get into it. Leaning with arms on the balcony railing, Kankuro lets out a disheveled grunt. Was hoping to see a bit more from the Uchiha. I've always heard stories on how dangerous the Uchiha clan was. Tamari stared impassively at the arena below as she leaned against the wall. Actually wonder what that kid could do, or if all those stories are hot air. Standing beside the young Suna Genin was a very tall man. He had two distinctive traits: red markings on the right side of his face, the only visible part of his head, with the rest being covered by his turban headgear and by a sheet hanging from it on the left side of his face. Wearing the standard Suna shinobi uniform, he grunts, crossing his arms. You never underestimate any opponent, Tamari. I get that, Baki-sensei, but these Konoha genin barely have a year since their graduation, right? Can we really expect much out of fresh rookies from the academy? Age or experience can be meaningless once a battle has begun. There are those crucial moments which can be exploited. If your enemy lets his guard down precisely because of those suppositions, it's in those moments you find you're either a warrior or a coward. Gaara said nothing as his seafoam green eyes stayed fixed on Uzumaki and the long blonde-haired Kumo girl. Something about their chakra felt familiar. He couldn't place it. No matter if they challenged him, then they would become a blood sacrifice for Mother. To their left, the Otogekier team keep their attention focused on Team 7. Dosuzite glared murderously toward at a certain blonde Uzumaki who's chatting with Sakura, and Haku absently, his left hand runs over his thick bandaged chest. Orochimaru-sama's orders be damned if I find a way. I am killing Uzumaki the first chance I get. I must say, Kakashi, a man who looked like the adult version of Lee right down to the haircut, green jumpsuit, orange leg warmers and monstrous eyebrows, spoke. The Jounin sensei of Tenten's team, Might Guy, was leaning with his arms on the railing looking to his eternal rival team. Thus far is interesting. Naruto squinted, realizing Sakura was hiding behind him. The blonde had the pleasure of meeting Tenten's eccentric sensei at her shop with Lee, and a couple other times he left an impression. If you already guessed, I had the honor of meeting Naruto-kun, so I can tell you have an impressive team, but can they match against my own? I'd like to see that. Kakashi lazily lifted his head from his book. Sorry, did you say something, Gainiji? And Tenten just sweat dropped and sighed heavily at their sensei's overreaction of being snubbed, while Lee simply had tears in his eyes. The Kiri and Kumo genin who had watched the weirdness just looked on. Wide-eyed. Konoha is full of weirdos, Kohei mentally yelled. Walking up the stair of the balcony, Sasuke strolled past Kumo, giving them short nod before standing by his team. Not sure if I should feel sorry or pity for Kabuto with his team. Naruto mumbled. The last loyal Uchiha gave a grunt. Seriously, who gives out their one weakness in the middle of a fight? Dumbass. Omoi nodded, rolling his lollipop in his mouth. Unless he really thought he was better or play psychological games, or his train of thought was halted by Karui's fist to the back of his head. Don't start please, Team 7. And even Kiri sweat drop as names soon pop up on the monitor. Yujito versus Kiba Inuzuka. Upon seeing the name of his opponent, the Inuzuka groaned out loudly. Oh man, I seriously wanted the Doge. Shino only shook his head at his teammate while their sensei sighed with a twitching eye. Naruto glared over at Kiba. Be careful, Fleabag, you might get your wish in the third exam. That is if Yujito-san doesn't kick your ass back to your kennel. Kiba just scoffed as Akamaru barked. Yeah right, dead last. You won't even last in the prelims. The young genin leapt over the railing to the arena floor below. He's real. Luckily he's not facing me, Tenten lightly growled as she spun a kunai in her hand. Haku only glared quietly. With Sabusa noticed the faint killer intent coming off his apprentice. Naruto waved it off. He likes being cocky, so do you. Sasuke, Sakura and Kakashi draw back, but I'm way cooler at it. At that, the majority of the Konoha, Kiri and Kumo crew on the balcony rolled their collective eyes, while Yujito snickered before jumping down the railings. Kushina's face was blank as her violet eyes were staring a hole at the Kumogakure. Kunoichi getting ready to fight Sum's boy. Even with all her experience in the ANBU, Yugao felt a deep chill in the room. Along with not being able to breathe, the killer intent radiating off her sensei was so overwhelming she felt she was drowning in water. Sensei, the purple-haired young woman managed to utter while under the pressure of such heavy killing intent, trying to snap her teacher out of her hate-filled thoughts. It worked as Kushina's head perked up and blinked a couple of times, as if suddenly realizing what she was unintentionally doing. She shook her head and focused on calming her emotions, much to the relief of her apprentice, who gasped softly for air upon feeling the heavy pressure leave the room. Sorry about that, Kushina sincerely apologized. She could pretty much hear Sakumo-sensei scolding her about not being in control of her emotions, something she never learned to do. Apparently not that Kushina honestly cared much for that. She was an Uzumaki. Wearing her heart on her sleeve was her nature. but she had to remind herself such things had consequences. Taking a deep breath, Kushina focused and controlled her feelings much better this time as she stared at the screen. Kumo can't remember the last time they came to Konoha for the exam. Sarutobi-sama was cautious, Yugao explained, but felt it was better not to shun them and avoid hostilities. The Uzumaki snorted in disgust. Avoid hostilities, she parroted. The ANBU could do nothing but awkwardly stand around as her sensei's gaze became lost in a haze of memories. To say Kushina was angry at Kumo's presence in the village was a massive understatement. She and that village had a very bloody history, or rather it was more accurate to say her clan and that village along with IWA had a bloody history. If there was two places Kushina hated more than anything in the world, it was the villages of Kumo and IWA, one of the two villages responsible for the destruction of her homeland and the death of her clan, and adding the failed attempt of kidnapping her as a child foiled by Minato. She had nothing but contempt for Kumogakure, and it was Kumo who just so happened to find my son as he was nearly killed by Hebe team's wind jutsu. The edge in her tone could have stopped any hardened warrior in their tracks. While I am uncertain of their Chunin substitute Sensei Samui, those three haven't shown any sign of underhandedness around Naruto. Kuma and Usagi had been watching them by order of Hokage-sama. After confronting Orochimaru, Kushina's gaze towards her student showed she was hardly convinced. Shifting her eyes back, she watched the monitor once again as Yujito passed her opponent. Both Kiba and Akamaru caught her scent. Okay, she smells good, but weird. I swear. He looked up, seeing Akamaru lightly shaking. What's wrong, buddy? The little pup just whimpered, barking softly. Strange, Akamaru only did that with he looked wide-eyed, paling considerably as he glanced up to Gaara, who was thankfully staring at Yujito. For God's no whatever reason, his mind flashed back to his team seeing Suna in the forest. Okay, she definitely wasn't as insane and bloodthirsty as that Gaara guy. He literally reeked of it. Granted, looks can always be deceiving, but why did something about her smell felt the same as that Suna lunatic? What the hell? Standing in front of her opponent, the Nibi Jinchuriki raised a delicate brow at the Inuzuka who was looking at her, and weirdly behind her, lightly glancing herself, she saw Gaara staring down solely at her. What's his problem? In her mindscape, Matatabi tilted her head before letting out a low growl at to what she sensed what was within the Suna child. Gaara, oh great, so that's Suna's new host for him. Kitten, you hear this? To Naruto. Both young blondes blink upon hearing the feline Bijou speaks to them that Gaara boy is a Jinchuriki. The two young shinobi did everything they could to suppress their reaction of shock and surprise at this monumental news. The most that managed to escape from them was a temporary widening of their eyes. Naruto, in particular, was reeling at this. Gaara was like them. Was this the reason he was so psychotic? He didn't know if that could be true. The fox had not driven him insane nor driven him to violent acts despite his clear dislike for people. Matatabi was pretty nice actually. So Naruto was reminded that the Bijou themselves had their own personalities. He had no idea what Gaara's tenant was like. Picking on his thoughts, Kurama snorted. Shikaku is a weakling, that's all there is to it. Kurama the flaming feline chastised him. Oh, I'm sorry, by the kitsen's mocking tone. He really was. And how about psychotic one-tailed weakling? Kurama then tuned out his feline siblings' verbal ranting by going back to sleep. Seeing how she was being ignored, Matatabi only growled before explosively huffing. At any rate, you two be careful if you confront Gaara. Suna Jinchuriki are known to be mentally unstable. Focusing back to her match, Yujito took a long deep breath before giving a steely gaze to the spooked-looking Kiba and Akamaru, having the feeling he was being stared at. Gaara glanced up, seeing Naruto staring at him with a wide-eyed expression. Ignoring the blonde's gaze, he looks back down to the arena once more. Yujito felt her eyes twitching, seeing and feeling the hesitance coming off from her opponent, putting her hands on her hips as she tapped her foot. The blonde Kunoichi tilted her head. What's wrong? What boy, you and your little puppy's balls get cut off when you jumped over that railing or something? Kiba froze before his temper exploded. What the hell did you just say? Well, if you took that stupid hood off your head it might help you actually hear things, you know. The Nibi Jinchuriki chided back, growling. He growled, faring his sharp teeth at her. She's playing you, Kiba, don't fall for her tricks, Shino advised from the stands. Usually he wouldn't have been heard. In fact, none of the other people in the stand was able to hear him due to how low his voice was, but Kiba's superior hearing allowed him to pick up his words. The Inuzuka breathed in deeply and held back his anger just a bit. He shared a look with his partner. Akamaru barked, expressing that while he was nervous around this opponent he would fight alongside him with all he had. Kiba grinned, let's do this, boy. Hey, coughed into his fist before directing his gaze at the genin. Are you two ready? Yujito rolled her neck, popping the stiff joints as she took a rather feral stance, crouching and spreading her fingers like claws. Kiba did the same, but placed one hand on the ground as Akamaru stood atop of his head. Second match Yujito Ni vs Kiba Inazuka Hayate called as he rose his hand began. He left the arena in a blur and Yujito charged at her opponent, nails growing and sharpening, ready to strike Kiba, and Akamaru leaped back dodging a slash from her nails, but she did not relent. Yujito quickly pursued them, launching several slashing attacks with great precision and speed. All the ninja and dog duo could do was dodge as her swiftness left little room for them to properly counter-attack. Leaping back once more, Kiba moved to deliver a sweeping upper kick. The moment she got close, his body flipping and landing on his hand as Yujito narrowly dodged the feet that nearly came into contact with her chin, forcing her to take a step back. Kiba did not stop. As soon as he landed on his palms, he twisted his body and pushed himself from the ground, delivering a set of aerial spinning kicks at his opponent. Yujito crossed her arms in front of her face, shielding herself from the kicks as they collided with her forearms. Kiba kicked her limbs repeatedly, finishing with a strong strike that pushed her back a few feet as he and Akamaru landed on their feet. "How you like that, bitch?" Kiba's grin was practically feral as Akamaru barked loudly at his feet. Kushina deadpans. "Oh, he took after some alright, right down to the trash talking," the redhead said, ignoring the dry look that came from Yugao. "Glad to see he wasn't slacking off after graduation." Sasuke spoke absently watching the fight. Indeed, Shino actually spoke up loud enough for Team 7 Kiri and Kumo to hear him. "You'll find him a difficult opponent if you face him, Uchiha. That goes for you as well." Naruto the blonde Uzumaki snorted. "Yeah, I will gladly whip that smug-ass smirk off, dog breath. I'll show him I'm not the same person I was in the academy." Shino gave his former classmate a look before turning back to the fight. Hinata, all the while, had been quiet, glancing at Naruto several times. Kiba's previous words ringed in her mind. Naruto-kun has changed a lot. Kiba-kun, like I want a Karui, only scoffed. "Won't matter how good he is, no way he's beating Yujito. She's trained harder than any of us. Sanwi-ne-chan is a badass, but Yugi-chan is the best of us because she earned it through blood, sweat and tears." Lowering her arms, Yujito's cat-like eyes gazed towards Kiba. "Was that all you got, my boy?" Before vanishing in a burst of speed. Kiba's eyes widened as his opponent's speed seemed to have increased exponentially. "Akamaru with me, buddy," the pup barked in acknowledgement, and the two prepared their special move. He triggered the four legs technique, driving his body's physical capabilities to new heights by enveloping his entire body with chakra to the point it became visible. He took on an even more feral look as his eyes turned into slits, his canines enlarged, and his nails grew. He was now a beast-like human. For the second part of his technique, Akamaru stood atop him, synchronizing his chakra with his partner. This would allow Akamaru to turn into a sort of clone of himself by using a full physical transformation technique and fight against their opponent with the same capabilities the human body would provide. Kiba felt Akamaru transform above him, but his senses were focused on the Kumo ninja. He could hear the sound of her footsteps, smell her scent to pinpoint her location. Even if she was moving at such high speed together, he and Akamaru in this state would be able to defeat her. But there was one factor Kiba didn't account for. Yujito appeared at their side in a blur and delivered a sweeping roundhouse kick that knocked the transformed Akamaru far away from Kiba's back, sending him crashing across the ground several feet away from them. They weren't fast enough to intercept her. "Akamaru!" Kiba shouted in concern for his friend. He barely had time to direct his anger and lash out when a backhanded strike hit him across the cheek. Spit and blood escaped his mouth as Yujito mercilessly continued her assault, a knee to his stomach followed by a series of punches that build up their way from his midsection until they connected to his chin with a devastating uppercut. Kiba stumbled backwards, pain dulling his senses as he was grabbed by collar of his hoodie and pulled back. Yujito buried her fist directly on his right cheek and sent him to the ground. Akamaru had just shook off the pain and was ready to retaliate and aid his partner. His human form took a very canine stance as he was about to jump into the fray. The pup froze in place, seeing his partner on the ground, bruised and bloodied, groaning as a forearm pressed against his throat while long sharp nails hovered threateningly above him. One look at those cat-like eyes that met his gaze and he received a clear message: "Try it and your partner is done for." With little choice, the pup growled in anger as he remained still satisfied. Yujito turned to her downed opponent. "Give up." Naruto and Sakura both cheered and winced as the proctor called the match. Upon Kiba's verbal submission, Akamaru returned to his original canine form, running back his master. "Damn, she is brutal," the blonde Uzumaki spoke up as Yujito starting walking away as Kiba sat up with a hiss. "Don't expect anything less if you by chance face her, Uzumaki-san," responded, looking to the stairs as Yujito comes up. "Cool fight." The Kumo Jinchuriki shrugged. "It was alright, but it didn't really get my blood pumping though. She'd like something Excitement to happen in these exams, something that didn't involve a lunatic Konoha traitor Sannin like in the forest. She never wanted to press her luck like that ever again, but a good fight against someone that was an equal to her, that would be her kind of fun. Grunting Kiba soon reached the balcony. As he passed everyone by he spoke not a word as Akamaru laid on his head whimpering. As soon he got to his team, Kurenai and Hinata began to fuss over him in the blink of an eye. "I'm fine, Sensei." Hinata, the Genjutsu mistress, was not buying it. "If you're not getting medically looked at, then I'm looking you over. So off with that shirt." Kiba just grunted as his puppy leaped into Hinata's arms. "Oi, Inuzuka," the blonde genin from Kumo called, and Kiba regarded her with an apathetic look, expecting her to gloat about her victory. To his surprise, there was no smile of smugness, no satisfaction in her eyes, but instead there was acknowledgement. "That was a good fight, keep it up and you'll get better." It wasn't mockery she spoke with, but respect. She was recognizing him as a respected opponent rather than a defeated enemy to lord over with a sense of superiority, something he'd have expected from Kumo. His surprise lasted little as he found himself smirking. "Next time I'm gonna kick your ass, you can try." Yujito smiled challengingly. A cough gathered everyone's attention once more as Hataki called from the arena, "We will now choose the participants for the next fight." The screen randomly began rolling their names. Everyone held their breath as they expectantly waited for the names to be displayed. It finally settled into Shino Aburame vs Haku. Yuki Kushino winced seeing Sum's boy get brutally beaten down by Kumo. As much as she hates that village, she will acknowledge talent when seeing it begrudgingly. As the new names come up, the redhead brightened. "Shibi's kid." She tilted her head looking at the 15 years old Kiri Kunoichi. "So that's the Haku that Naruto kept talking about from Senpai's report about Nami no Kuni." She was personally trained by Zabuza Momochi. Combined with her bloodline limit Hayatan, she can be a dangerous opponent. Yugao spoke in an analytical tone, eyeing the monitor seriously. "Sochi was right, she really is a beautiful young lady." Kushina's soul student face faults. "I can see why he has a bit of a crush on her." "She wasn't listening to a thing I just said." Standing a good distance in front of each other, Haku gave a respectful bow to the Aburame. "I hope we both do well, Shino san." In return, Shino gave a short nod. "I feel the same." Haku-san coughing. Heiei raised his hand. Third match, Shino Aburame vs Haku. Yuki began and vanished from the arena. Haku immediately took a stance, going through the proper hand seals to ready her ice element. The Aburame had not moved. He stood still with his hands on his pockets, but Haku knew this was not from arrogance on his part. Aburame fought at a distance as Zabuza had taught her. They relied on their hives to fight. Haku had little to no experience when fighting insects. There had been encounters in which she faced opponents capable of summoning giant insects, but not entire swarms of creatures so small they could easily escape her vision. She would play on defensive first. If her suspicions were correct, then his hide would not be able to withstand the cold. Shino slowly took his hands out, small insects of many varieties swarming over his limbs. As they seemed to come out from his very skin, Karui paled significantly, a reaction mirrored by Omoi. Yujito gagged, pressing a hand over her mouth. "Oh gods, that's news." She had heard the tales, read the reports and everything, but to see it firsthand was something else. "When I heard about the Aburame being living hives, I thought that may have been hyperbole." Nope. Sakura shivered. Literal. Chojuro felt nauseated while Kohei thought his eyes might bulge out of his head. "That's disturbing." Zabuza rolled his eyes. Wimps. A loud yawn came from a bored-looking Shikamaru who lazily leaned against railing while Chuji ate chips beside him. "I could be taking a nap right now." Asuma only rolled his eyes, lighting a new cigarette, ignoring the glares from Ino, Kurenai, and even Hinata. Well, glare was too strong a word for the young Hyuga. At most it could be called vague disapproval. "Take a nap after the prelims, dummy." Ino lightly snapped. "Till then, suck it up, troublesome." Shika kept one eye open on the arena. "I know." Shino's noticed already. The temperature is dropping. Shino soon noticed his own breath even as he kept his eyes on his opponent. A bloodline limit. Haku's eyes never left her opponent as frost soon coated the floor around her feet and started to spread more and more. The Aburame quickly took action before the temperature could drop further. He sent a swarm of his bugs flying straight towards his opponent. Beetles and other flyers numbering in the hundreds, their amalgamation creating a shifting cloud-like form from their. Haku's eyes narrowed with a shift of her hand signs. She increased the potency of her ice element, taking effect on the air around her. The moment the insects got within a feet of coming into contact with her, they suddenly splintered off and moved around her as to avoid her, many of the swarm falling to the ground frozen. Shino quickly recalled the swarm back to him. As he analyzed the situation, the temperature around his opponent was too much for his hive to handle. The insects had instinctively avoided her, and even them various others had fallen prey to the low temperatures, almost frozen in an instant. "Temperatures are too much for my swarm," Shino thought critically. "Adaptation to the temperatures will require a bit of time before they can withstand it, but by then my foe will have already attacked. Her ice element will be too strong for me to counter on my own." He tried to draw out any possible outcome that might Result in his factory arena unsuitable for evasion tactics and stealth, not enough time to remain at bay and let my hive adapt, yet the odds decreased with every alternative he thought of. Chances of victory very low. Shino let out a silent breath. Proctor, I submit defeat. Appearing back in the arena, Hey 8 gave the Aburame teen a look. You're certain? Getting a nod, the Proctor announced the winner. Hakuyuki wins by opponent's verbal submission. A wise decision. The Hayatan user smiled as her eyes soon vanished with the temperature returning to normal. I'm glad there was no need to spill blood. I'd rather not sacrifice my insects. You are quite skilled, Yuki-san. A loud grunt came from Zabuza, gaining people's attention. You're still too soft, Haku. The Hayatan user merely smiled. I know. Kushina whistled. She's good. She knows her bloodline limit well. Yugao gave a small nod. The redhead's eyes lit up seeing the next match. Oh, this will be cool. Sakura Haruno versus Ino Yamanaka. Wonder how good Inoichi's daughter is. The ANBU woman simply looked the other way, blinking. The rosette put her hair in a low ponytail, giving Naruto a thumbs up. Wish me luck. You don't need it. Naruto smirked back, watching his teammate go down the stair. Hope she doesn't kill Ino, the blonde muttered as Ino walked by, winking to Sasuke, who ignored her. I'll win big time, Sasuke-kun. The Yamanaka sing-songed before going down the steps. Samui's critical. I never missed a detail. As she spoke to the boys of Team 7, she's a little thin for someone her age. Naruto nervously chuckled as Haku and Shino came up the stairs and back to their teams. Ino is bit of a fangirl. Why did he just feel a hint of rage surge from Karui Yujito and Samui a bit? Sasuke spoke up, lifting a brow. Kakashi momentarily took his gaze up from his book. Sayasuma, he called to the leader of Team 9. What kind of missions have your kids taken? D ranks, occasional C ranks with bandits. Nothing, Mayor. Mostly bodyguard duty, the Sarutobi said as he took a drag from his cigarette. Thought it would have been enough for her to wise up a bit. Did she kill anybody yet? Seen a corpse at least? Nope, Asuma said regretfully. Usually those are good eye-openers. Well, I guess we were lucky in that regard, the copynin said optimistically. Our first serious mission really gave my cute little students a good welcome into the shinobi life. Yeah, Naruto drawled, a bit disturbed with how casual the Jounin were about the whole thing, with a psycho, a rank ninja, trying to kill us. Yozabuza lazily waved at them. You fought that guy? Kiba, now shirtless and covered with some bandages, yelled as he pointed to the Kirinin, who yawned. Do I look crazy, Fleabag? I was fighting Haku-chan while Kakashi-sensei dealt with the lunatic over here. Naruto yelled back. How the hell she stayed normal when being raised by that is beyond me. Zabuza oddly enough took the jibes with pride, puffing up his chest out till Haku spoke. Zabuza-sama is hopeless when it comes to cooking. I had to teach him. The swordsman face faulted. Standing face to face with her opponent, Sakura pulled out her black gloves and put them on. When did you start wearing that? Billboard brow ignoring the jibe. The rosette gave her former friend a look. When I decided to be a real kunoichi. What the hell does that mean? Ino's eye twitched, feeling like she was insulted. Means exactly what I said. Sakura kept a calm demeanor as she popped her knuckles. Thanks to Naruto and our first mission as a team, I had my eyes open. She soon took one of the two taijutsu stances that she and Naruto have been learning together for several months. Now let me show you. Kushina perked up seeing that taijutsu stance. That's Yugao nodded as her sensei looked at her, then back to the monitor with a smirk. Let's see how far she and Sochi got using my taijutsu. Her face soon turned serious. What did she mean by now being a real kunoichi? Sakura-san, I believe, became a ninja for the wrong reasons. It was to impress a boy. Yugao shook her head, remembering the Pinkette's original attitude and outlook on life before Nami no Kuni. The redhead paused before a long loud groan came from the redhead's throat as she now glared. She was a fangirl. Yup, her and Ino-san though, by how it looks. Only Sakura-san started taking her duties seriously several months ago. Inoichi-san's daughter, are you? Kushina growled as she ran her hands over her face. I swear everything was fine till that masked bastard showed up, and I was sealed away. Then I wake up and the whole damn village has gone toshit, she screamed before huffing. Yugao rubbed her sensei's back in sympathy. She honestly shared her sentiment. Are the contestants ready? Hey8 asked after recovering from a coughing fit. Upon receiving two nods of confirmation, he raised his hand. Fourth match, Sakura Haruno vs Ino Yamanaka begin. By the time the proctor started the match, Ino was already sure of her chances. All she needed to do was lock onto Sakura with her mind transfer technique and manipulate her body to make the Pinkette surrender. It seemed as though Sakura was aware of her plan, so she wasted no time in charging at her. Ino smirked as Sakura raised her fist, jumping away as to avoid the fist that missed its mark and carried on its trajectory towards the floor. The fist made contact with the ground, and the ground promptly exploded. By exploded, what it actually means is that the sheer force behind broke through concrete, that it sends small chunks of stone flying upwards by a few feet. Cracks spread like A twisted spider's web until it reached around 3 to 4 feet in size with an indentation of the concrete of at least 1 foot. The act had made Ino lose her balance and fall flat on her, but leaving her to openly stare at the pinkette with horror. She managed to utter only incoherencies as she comically trembled before what she had just witnessed. Hiruzen's and Jiraiya's jaws drop along with majority of onlookers. Seeing the destruction of Sakura's punch to the ground, Naruto just shivered painfully, remembering the sparring sessions his clones had as she learned that technique. Asuma's cigarette fell out of his mouth, which was mimicked by the chip in Chuji's hand. Tenten and Niji's eyes were the size of dinner plates along with their senseis, while Lee Gok, Team Kiri and Kumo, who had not seen the rosette in action, were not faring much better as Zabuza robotically turned to a visibly stunned Kakashi. "What the fuck did you do to her?" Kakashi, Sasuke to his credit, tried to keep his cool as he looked over at Naruto. How very painfully Naruto still shivered. "Not another one." The Hokage and Gama Sannin bellowed in terror. Kushina's jaw dropped. "Oh fucking hell, she figured out how to do that all by herself," Yugao said wearily, having watched the training sessions of Naruto and Sakura did on their own. The Jounin sensei of Oto lifted a brow. "Crude, but a remarkable recreation of my old teammate's monstrous strength, more than what I expect from a civilian-born. Might as well keep an eye on her out of curiosity." As the smoke cleared, Sakura, almost predatory, stared right at Ino like the new me. What the hell? Sakura was Genjutsu type. Even I know that. Ino just looked wide-eyed, trembling. The pinkette rolled her neck. "I figured out that if my chakra control was that good, I might as well put it to use for more practical means," she called, having the punch equivalent of a bomb practical. So Sakura's smile was a bit cheeky. "What have you learned since the academy? Been working on your family's jutsu, right?" The genin took a few steps forward, walking out from the rubble. "So come on, try using it against me." Ino gulped. This was not good. This was most definitely not good. She did not expect for Sakura to have grown this much stronger since they started training with their teams. It made her own progress look paltry in comparison. No, now was not the time for doubt. She was as much a kunoichi as she was the Yamanaka. First thought of using her mind transfer technique, but hesitated when she realized the pinkette was most likely goading her. Sakura was smart. She must have laid some sort of trap or had something in mind that would work in her advantage. The moment she did her technique, Genjutsu would not work much as chakra control was Sakura's specialty. This led her with one option, a frontal assault. She would have to outmaneuver and outpace her. So Ino got to her feet and shifted into a taijutsu stance. "Tell me she's not serious." Tenten deadpanned, attacking Sakura-chan head-on. "Seems unwisely," tactfully said Asuma. Facepalmed. "Ino, you're supposed to be smarter than this." Chuji noted his longtime friend had closed his eyes and was trying to rest on the railing. "Shikamaru, don't you want to watch Ino's match? Why bother?" The young heir of the Nara clan yawned. Ino already lost. The Yamanaka charged forwards, chakra coursing through her legs as she accelerated in a dash of speed. Fist reared back to strike her opponent. Sakura did not move, which Ino mistook as a sign she wouldn't react in time, leading her to throw her punch. Sakura caught it unflinchingly with one hand. "You're really thin, you know," the Haruno casually commented as though they weren't in the middle of a fight. "You should eat more protein, build up muscle." For the second time today, Ino gulped. Finally, the blonde kunoichi couldn't stop herself. "How did you change so much?" Looking at her former old friend up close now, she saw how toned and fit Sakura's muscles were. Granted, she saw them in the first exam, but now really looking, the rosette was in the best shape she'd ever seen. Sakura's jade eyes gave her a warm look. "I had a wake-up call on my first mission, and Naruto made me see some things differently." She really owed her friend so much for helping become the kunoichi she is now. Just seeing Ino like this, how she also used to be, it really bugged her. "Why would you listen to the dead?" Ino winced as Sakura glared as she squeezed the blonde's fist. "Don't you ever call Naruto dead. Last he has gone above and beyond from the person we remember during the academy. Sure, he's a cocky smartass, but that will never change, and you saw his bloodline limit in the first exam, but that's the tip of the iceberg." The rosette shook her head. "Ino, you need to start being a real kunoichi. You're the heir to one of the shinobi clans of the village, and it scares me to think if your teams gets into real trouble and you're still like this, you're a better person who just shouldn't settle for being weak." Fangirl kunoichi, outrage, humiliation, the feeling of her pride being wounded. The Yamanaka held these emotions in her heart as the pinkette's words cut deep. She wasn't just some fangirl, she was a kunoichi. She was Ino from the Yamanaka clan. She would show everyone she was worth it of that name. She wouldn't let the Sakura's judgment or anybody's get to her like this. Ino knew who she was. She knew she was strong. That's what she was telling herself. "I am a true kunoichi." The Yamanaka seethed through gnashed teeth, holding back the tears. Of anger she reared her free arm backhand closing into a fist. Ino's sentence was cut short as Sakura's free arm lashed out with a swift left hook. Ino's head turned to the side as her body fell almost boneless as consciousness left her. Sakura grabbed the Yamanaka's form and gently laid her on the ground. She turned to Proctor, who immediately approached to check the blonde's condition. He coughed before declaring winner by knockout Sakura Haruno. The Rosette wasn't really listening as she stared at the unconscious form of her former best friend. Maybe we can be friends again. After all this, she soon noticed Ino-sensei appearing and picking up his student. She should wake up in a bit. I made sure to hit her softly. I just hope she listened. Asuma smirked. We can hope. Good show, kid. Be proud of that time skip. Jiraiya grunted beside Hiruzen as the ANBU cleaned up the area floor to be fight able again. You know, after Nami I had planned on teaching the brat my taijutsu since he was still using basic academy katas, and that only gets you so far. He pretended to think by tapping his chin, then showing surprise. But who'd have guessed that Naruto found his own mother's private taijutsu scroll in the public library? No less. His voice held the fakest tone of confusion and wonderment possible. Dryly gazing down at his sensei, the elderly Kage simply lit his tobacco pipe without saying a single word. The Gama-san Nin kept talking. No big surprise, the brat's been teaching Pinky. He had been observing the two when they did their own training sessions by themselves. Jiraiya was impressed how both were actually coming. Granted, he didn't see when Sakura started pulling a Tsunade, thus his alarmed reaction. Quite the interesting year this is turning out to be. The Hokage idly commented. Interesting, yeah. Jiraiya curtly replied with a dry tone. I guess that's one word to describe it. Now let's see who it'll be for the next round. Hiruzen said as the names began spinning. One again. He could practically see the aspirants holding their breath in anticipation. Then the result was shown. Well, Jiraiya muttered, this will be interesting. Ginma coughed before announcing the next contestants are Chuji Akamichi vs Rock Lee. He was cut short by the sudden exclamation of raw unadulterated excitement as the genin in question cheered at the tops of his lungs. Now it's my turn to prove myself, Guy Sensei. The boy's eyes were aflame. The sheer enthusiasm made one feel as though he had literally burst into flames. The ever-enthusiastic sensei of the team's namesake pats his hand on Lee's shoulder. Yes, Lee, time to show everyone here how hard work is just as good as natural talent. Guy gives thumbs up and smile which somehow gleams like the sun. Kohei rubbed his eyes seriously. Konoha is weird. His two teammates idly nodded back. Choji on his part looked partly concerned against his opponent and actually having to fight him. Sensei Asuma simply pats his student's back. You got this, Choji, and food's on the house. After the Sarutobi chuckled as the Akimichi heir was already standing down at the arena floor. You know, Chuji will thin your wallet dry, right? Shikamaru commented, looking behind him to see Ino was still unconscious. He looks like Chozo when he was 12. Kushina beamed as she and Yugao had lunch. How good is he? Choji-san has a bit of confidence issues, but he has showed promise. Kushina smiled before turning so serious. In a matter of seconds it threw her apprentice off. How can you tell me with a straight face that Lee kid is not? Guys, the red-headed Yuzu woman just stared at the monitor in horror. The eyebrows, hair, and that god's awful green jumpsuit. He was practically Guy's freaking clone. Hokage-sama did do a secret blood test. There is no relation. Kushina just gawked with neither him nor the deceased Dai being a relation. Gods help us. Naruto shook his head as Lee jumped from the balcony. Glad I was never that bad. You gotta respect Lee. Ten muttered, if it wasn't for him, Guy Sensei would have put US in spandex instead. A dark cloud seemed to cover her eyes in dread as the horrifying possibility flashed in her mind. Even the ever-serious Niji couldn't help but mirror her expression. The other teams from Konoha sweat dropped at this. Team Guy has it hard. Sakura muttered to no one in particular. You have no idea. Kakashi replied, are both contestants ready? Yosh Lee shouted as she took a flawless stance. Yeah, Choji said as he readied himself to perform his family's jutsu. Height raised his arm. Fifth match, Choji Akimichi vs Rock Lee. Begin. Lee spun forward with a burst of speed that left a dust cloud in his wake. Choji stared in surprise, hastily reacting by enlarging his arm to huge proportions to the point it was larger than his entire body. He grunted as he a punch which Lee easily ducked under with sheer speed and agility. The spandex wearing genin positioned himself behind the Akimichi, and before the large-bellied ninja could turn he delivered a swift chopping strike to his neck. Choji fell to the ground like a sack of potatoes. The entire arena fell silent. The spectators could only watch, gawking at what had just transpired. The fuck? It was Zabuza who had broken the silence as he voiced the incredulity everyone was feeling at the moment. Proctor Lee stood straight as he stared at the confused Height. Does this mean I win? Yeah. Even his cough seemed to have taken a back seat due to how surprised he was. Winner by knockout Rock Lee. Lee's voice roared throughout the arena as he danced and cheered. Temari and Kankuro just blinked along with their sensei, who looked just as bewildered. Gaara only watched blankly before looking back to Yujito and Naruto in her medical section. Kushina and Yugao both gawked as they watched. Guys, Mini-Me cheered to the heavens above. Troublesome Shikamaru just grunted as Asuma sighed before going to retrieve his second unconscious student. And that just leaves me to represent my team. Wonderful, the Nara aired dryly muttered, leaning on the railing. Choji's no slouch when he actually fights. Naruto lightly defended, remembering the few spars in the academy. Kakashi spoke up. Their dynamics were too contrasting. Choji had power, but Lee has speed and strength. The difference between them was clear. Had he had better defenses to counter Lee's speed, the fight would have been different. Sasuke reasoned. At least it would not have been this one-sided. Compatibility can be a very deciding factor in a battle. Their sensei instructed them, even if your strengths are overall greater than your opponent, this one can still exploit a weakness or possess greater talent in fields you yourselves are weak against. For example, if your skill with dispelling genjutsu is not good enough, it will not matter how much stronger than your opponent you are. If this unspecializes in genjutsu, then you will most likely lose. Or more recently, the fight with Shino and Haku. I imagine he couldn't prepare his hive in time to adapt against the cold, which resulted in them being unsuitable for his match. I guess that's true. Naruto admitted Shino had been one of the best students in his class and he was damn good, but the Aburame didn't care for boasting, so the true reach of his skills were hard to predict. In a pure taijutsu match, there's no way I could win against Lee. That's why he had his jutsu and tactics to employ. The swordsman from Mist chuckled as he directed a smarmy look at the Jounin of Team 9. Hey Sarutobi, 2 down 1 to go. Asuma lightly glared at him. If we were alone, I'd make you eat those words, and I'll have you know my last student can handle himself. He'll get to the finals. It depends, Shikamaru lazily added. It wasn't said with pessimism, it was a mere observation, like he was stating a fact. Come on Shikamaru, back me up a little here. Karina couldn't help but giggle at the misfortune her boyfriend was going through. Oh, she felt horrible about it, but couldn't help herself truly as everything got back to normal with Lee returning to his team. 2 names appeared on the wall screen: Tenten Higurashi versus Kintsuchi. Upon seeing their names, both young ladies glared hard at one another before leaping over the railing. Kick her ass, Ten-chan. Naruto cheered along with Sakura. You can do it. The green beasts cheered on as one. Tenten Higurashi. Kushina looked wide-eyed. Kaido's girl. She was only 1 or 2 years old when she last saw her. God, she looks like her mother. Naruto goes to the Higurashi shop quite frequently. He and Tenten-san have become good friends, Yugao said before sipping on her glass of water. Hearing that, Kushina smiled. How is that old bear? Hasn't changed one bit. Kin lightly sighed in disappointment. Here, I was hoping to fight Uzumaki. You won't get near him. Tenten spoke threateningly as she glared, pulling out a kunai for each hand. I'll make damn sure of that. A predatory grin came from the Oto Kunoichi's lips. Hope you can back up those words, honey. Gemma coughed. Are we done with the pissing match? Ready? The 2 ladies nod. Tenten Higurashi versus Kintsuchi begin. Tenten's kunai were a blur as they slashed through the air with the intent to strike her opponent. Kin defended herself well by pulling out 2 kunai of her own. The weapons clashed with the sound of scrapping metal as sparks came forth as they met. Both kunoichi showed them to be of similar speed and agility. Neither gained the upper hand as they traded blows. Tenten parried away a lash as she delivered a sweeping kick to the left. Kin blocked it by raising her own leg and letting it receive the blow. It did not deter her, so she spun her right kunai in her hand and thrust it forward, aiming for the bun-haired girl's chest. Tenten quickly ducked, letting herself fall to the ground, dodging the attack and striking against her opponent's legs. Kin backed away as she threw her own kunai at her. Tenten rolled away, the blades burying themselves on the ground, and jumped back to her feet, pulling a scroll from her pouch. The item transformed into a whole different object, a sickle blade connected with a chain to a heavy iron chain. She spun the Kusarigama's chain and threw it to Kin. The chain wrapped around her body, and so Tenten pulled it, dragging the sound Nin with it. When the opponent was but a foot close to her, she disappeared in a blast of smoke, leaving behind a log which, to Tenten's shock, had various bomb tags planted around it. The explosion shook the arena but did not cause much damage. Amongst the fire and smoke, weapon mistress disappeared. Lee called out her name in fear while Niji stared stoically. Their sensei kept a carefully guarded expression. Out of the smoke came Tenten, skidding over the ground with a shield raised in front of her face. It had black patches over its surface and let out a trail of smoke, indicating it had taken the brunt of the damage. The bun-haired girl's pants were a bit singed. A few parts of it had been torn with the explosion, but her lowering the shield showed she was otherwise relatively uninjured. Tenten panted softly. That had Been close, you rely on those tools too much, her opponent called out mockingly. The weapon mistress did not deign that with a reply. She wouldn't play her game, but the sound ninja carried on. A true kunoichi knows that she herself is the tool. Everything she is, she will use her body in any way that is necessary if it means fulfilling her mission. Tenten knew what she was referring to. The kunoichi present knew what she was referring to. Ninja used every dirty trick in the book, including those that some men and women would prefer not to in this day and age. Seducing your way through a mission using your body as another tool at your disposal, degrading yourself and submitting to emotional and mentally challenging tasks if it was necessary. Shinobi and Konoha did not insult those that were brave enough to take up such tasks. Indeed, to insult them was the same as insulting their entire forces. To sacrifice their dignity like that, she herself had nothing but respect for her seniors, some of those who no doubt had taken up those types of missions before, but that was not the type of shinobi she wanted to be. Not to disrespect the role some kunoichi had taken in the name of the village, but she just couldn't see herself taking up such a mission. That's not the type of kunoichi I am, she declared finally. Tchq Kin scoffed in disgust. You think you can remain pure in this kind of work? You're a little girl, playing to be a ninja like all of the rest. You have no idea what I've done for the sake of my mission. She shrugged as she let out a smirk. And hey, if you have to, might as well enjoy it. Tenten exhaled and closed her eyes for a moment. Well, that's your business, not mine. She honestly did not care for what her opponent said or did. Her words meant nothing to Tenten. She was just another enemy to overcome. Kin let out a soft growl before pulling out various senbon between her fingers. Tenten readied herself, but to her surprise Kin had thrown them to she sides of the arena. Why had she wait? She heard something, a jiggling bells. Tenten soon realized there were tiny bells tied to the senbon. She quickly stood on alert, unsure as to what the purpose of those bells. Tenten fell on one knee as a deep piercing ringing assaulted her ears and went straight through her eardrums. She had let go of her weapon to hold her head, trying to hold back the growing pain. Those bells are emitting a sound that goes straight to your brain, Kin said haughtily, and soon she appeared to multiply before the weapon mistress' eyes. No matter what you do, you won't be able to. Tenten quickly pulled out a pair of kunai, fighting through the pain, and threw them at her sides. The kunai embedded themselves on the wall near the senbon, revealing the paper tags on them. The bombs went off, destroying the senbon and the bells, ending the sound. Whoa, Naruto exclaimed as stands trembled as a result of the blast. She's really holding her own here, Sakura said. Impressed, Kin growled in anger. You little. Tenten was already counterattacking, throwing various bombs at her opponent, who quickly backed away thinking they were explosives. The bombs did explode, but not with fire and force, but rather with a dense smoke covering a large part of the arena. You think you can hide? Kin pulled out her own set of explosive tags. This is the oldest trick in the book. She threw her explosives, and these went off with great force, blasting away some of the white smoke, and replacing it with the black smoke, resulting of black powder being ignited. But as this one settled, Kin's eyes widened as Konoha Genin was nowhere to be seen. What were Tenten appeared behind her in a burst of speed, smoke clinging to her in a trail. Kin gasped in shock. Tenten spun a long staff in her hand and struck right at the back of Kin's head. The sound Nin could barely do anything but gasp as the impact made everything go dark. For her, the weapon mistress lightly pants. I can respect anyone who takes the role of a kunoichi seriously, but going after my friend, you can go to hell, bitch. Walking over, the proctor knelt down and checked Kin's pulse. Kintsuchi has been rendered unconscious. Tenten Igarashi is the winner. Lee, Naruto and Sakura cheered loudly. Niji only faintly smirked with their sensei now smiling, giving the thumbs up. A now conscious Ino, who awoke in midst the battle, watched on quietly beside Shikamaru. The lazy Nara quietly eyed her. Maybe Sakura did wake her up. He'd never say it out loud, but he really cared for his team. And as much as he loathed the thought of training like any true Nara, he knew he had to work at his strengths to keep them up to par. I hope Ino paid attention to that fight. I don't like thinking about bad what-if scenarios if any future missions of ours go south. Kushina leaned back on her bed. She does rely on weapons a bit too much, the redhead thought quietly. Still, I can trust Guy into training her right. Retrieving her weapons, Tenten made her way up the stairs to the balcony. She was greeted by Naruto, Sakura, and Lee. Good job, Tenchan. Tenten smirked. She was just all talk. Tenten, they winced at Guy shouting at full volume. Tears streamed down from his eyes. I am so proud of you, my youthful blooming flower. You have taken one more step towards becoming a great kunoichi. He pointed dramatically at the horizon he was seeing in his mind. Once Niji wins, we shall all take a triumphant 100 laps celebration around Konoha. Do that yourself. Tenten was not afraid on calling out on her teachers. Ridiculous antics, but Tenten Lee joined his teacher. It is important we bond in both defeat and victory. And then Guy continued, we shall train for the finals, we'll start light. I'm thinking using the 50-pound weights on the first day. Count on Guy to have more enthusiasm and energy than most teenagers. Kakashi weakly chuckled while the rest sweat dropped at the odd man's antics as Kin was whisked away by the medics. The next match got everyone's attention as two names came up: Naruto Uzumaki versus Dosu. King Yuta. Both genin glared hard at one another. Feeling a hand on his shoulder, Naruto glanced to Sakura. Be careful, the blonde winks before turning and being face to face with Sasuke. Neither say anything before the Uchiha smirked. Don't lose, Naruto smirked back before walking down the steps. I do have to kick your ass in the finals. After all, Sakura only deadpants at her teammates. Boys, the Oto Jounin smirked as Dosu glanced at him before leaping over the railing. Impress me some more, Naruto-kun. Normally Shikamaru was all for calm and quiet, but Ino not saying as much as a word since waking up was actually starting to bug him. What's on your mind, Ino? The blonde Kunoichi said nothing as she kept her eyes on the arena. Has Naruto really changed? Sure, he actually dressed better and was around Sasuke's height now, looking like he ate more than just ramen. But wasn't he still just the same old Naruto? At that, her teammate shrugged. No idea, that got him a light glare. Sure, Choji and I spoke to him a bit during the academy, but that was about it. Haven't really spoken or seen him since graduation. Ino lightly huffed before looking back down to the arena. Asuma said nothing as he had heard a few things from his father and Kakashi. Just watch and see, Ino. Naruto might just surprise you. Who are these Oto guys anyway? The redhead asked in curiosity. They weren't around back in my day. It felt odd to refer to what to her was just a few days ago as her Daiyugao. Shrugged. Some minor village that's on the rise, not a lot of info on them. Honestly, they're barely a threat to anyone. What we do know is that their shinobi are very ruthless, more so than the average ninja. Kushina's gaze is steely as he son and that Oto genin soon stand at the arena center. Kick that mummy man's ass, Sochi, you look like shit, Naruto snarked as he glared at Dosu. The Oto genin taps his bandaged chest. I intend to return the favor, Uzumaki. You're welcome to try. Naruto Uzumaki versus Dosu. King Yuta fight. Naruto wasted no time, immediately going through the hand signs motions. He planted his right foot forward, sending a trail of crystals which grew out like spikes from the ground directly at Dosu. The bandaged genin made no attempt to evade, he merely brought his Yugao said before sipping on her glass of water. Hearing that, Kushina smiled. How is that old bear? Hasn't changed one bit. Kin lightly sighed in disappointment. Here, I was hoping to fight Uzumaki. You won't get near him. Tenten spoke threateningly as she glared, pulling out a kunai for each hand. I'll make damn sure of that. A predatory grin came from the Oto Kunoichi's lips. Hope you can back up those words, honey. Gemma coughed. Are we done with the pissing match? Ready? The two ladies nod. Tenten Igarashi versus Kintsuchi begin. Tenten's kunai were a blur as they slashed through the air with the intent to strike her opponent. Kin defended herself well by pulling out two kunai of her own. The weapons clashed with the sound of scrapping metal as sparks came forth as they met. Both kunoichi showed them to be of similar speed and agility. Neither gained the upper hand as they traded blows. Tenten parried away a lash as she delivered a sweeping kick to the left. Kin blocked it by raising her own leg and letting it receive the blow. It did not deter her, so she spun her right kunai in her hand and thrust it forward, aiming for the bun-haired girl's chest. Tenten quickly ducked, letting herself fall to the ground, dodging the attack and striking against her opponent's legs. Kin backed away as she threw her own kunai at her. Tenten rolled away, the blades burying themselves on the ground, and jumped back to her feet, pulling a scroll from her pouch. The item transformed into a whole different object, a sickle blade connected with a chain to a heavy iron chain. She spun the Kusarigama's chain and threw it to Kin. The chain wrapped around her body, and so Tenten pulled it, dragging the sound nin with it. When the opponent was but a foot close to her, she disappeared in a blast of smoke, leaving behind a log which, to Tenten's shock, had various bomb tags planted around it. The explosion shook the arena but did not cause much damage. Amongst the fire and smoke, weapon mistress disappeared. Lee called out her name in fear while Niji stared stoically. Their sensei kept a carefully guarded expression. Out of the smoke came Tenten, skidding over the ground with a shield raised in front of her face. It had black patches over its surface and let out a trail of smoke, indicating it had taken the brunt of the damage. The bun-haired girl's pants were a bit singed. A few parts of it had been torn with the explosion, but her lowering the shield showed she was otherwise relatively uninjured. Tenten panted softly. That had been close. You rely on those tools too much, her opponent called out mockingly. The weapon mistress did not deign that with a reply. She wouldn't play her game, but the sound ninja carried on. A true kunoichi knows that she herself is the tool. Everything she is, she will use her body in any way that is necessary if it means fulfilling her mission. Tenten knew what she was referring to. The kunoichi present knew what she was referring to. Ninja used every dirty trick in the book. including those that some men and women would prefer not to in this day and age. Seducing your way through a mission using your body as another tool at your disposal, degrading yourself and submitting to emotional and mentally challenging tasks if it was necessary. Shinobi in Konoha did not insult those that were brave enough to take up such tasks. Indeed, to insult them was the same as insulting their entire forces. To sacrifice their dignity like that, she herself had nothing but respect for her seniors, some of those who no doubt had taken up those types of missions before, but that was not the type of shinobi she wanted to be. Not to disrespect the role some kunoichi had taken in the name of the village, but she just couldn't see herself taking up such a mission. That's not the type of kunoichi I am, she declared finally. Tchq Kin scoffed in disgust. You think you can remain pure in this kind of work? You're a little girl, playing to be a ninja like all of the rest. You have no idea what I've done for the sake of my mission. She shrugged as she let out a smirk. And hey, if you have to, might as well enjoy it. Tenten exhaled and closed her eyes for a moment. Well, that's your business, not mine. She honestly did not care for what her opponent said or did. Her words meant nothing to Tenten. She was just another enemy to overcome. Kin let out a soft growl before pulling out various senbon between her fingers. Tenten readied herself, but to her surprise Kin had thrown them to she sides of the arena. Why had she wait? She heard something, a jiggling bells. Tenten soon realized there were tiny bells tied to the senbon. She quickly stood on alert, unsure as to what the purpose of those bells. Tenten fell on one knee as a deep piercing ringing assaulted her ears and went straight through her eardrums. She had let go of her weapon to hold her head, trying to hold back the growing pain. Those bells are emitting a sound that goes straight to your brain, Kin said haughtily, and soon she appeared to multiply before the weapon mistress' eyes. No matter what you do, you won't be able to. Tenten quickly pulled out a pair of kunai, fighting through the pain, and threw them at her sides. The kunai embedded themselves on the wall near the senbon, revealing the paper tags on them. The bombs went off, destroying the senbon and the bells, ending the sound. Whoa, Naruto exclaimed as stands trembled as a result of the blast. She's really holding her own here, Sakura said. Impressed, Kin growled in anger. You little. Tenten was already counterattacking, throwing various bombs at her opponent, who quickly backed away thinking they were explosives. The bombs did explode, but not with fire and force, but rather with a dense smoke covering a large part of the arena. You think you can hide? Kin pulled out her own set of explosive tags. This is the oldest trick in the book. She threw her explosives, and these went off with great force, blasting away some of the white smoke, and replacing it with the black smoke resulting of black powder being ignited. But as this one settled, Kin's eyes widened as Konoha Genin was nowhere to be seen. What were? Tenten appeared behind her in a burst of speed, smoke clinging to her in a trail. Kin gasped in shock. Tenten spun a long staff in her hand and struck right at the back of Kin's head. The sound Nin could barely do anything but gasp as the impact made everything go dark. For her, the weapon mistress lightly pants. I can respect anyone who takes the role of a kunoichi seriously, but going after my friend, you can go to hell, bitch. Walking over, the proctor knelt down and checked Kin's pulse. Kintsuchi has been rendered unconscious. Tenten Igarashi is the winner. Lee, Naruto and Sakura cheered loudly. Niji only faintly smirked, with their sensei now smiling, giving the thumbs up. A now conscious Ino, who awoke in midst the battle, watched on quietly beside Shikamaru. The lazy Nara quietly eyed her. Maybe Sakura did wake her up. He'd never say it out loud, but he really cared for his team. And as much as he loathed the thought of training like any true Nara, he knew he had to work at his strengths to keep them up to par. I hope Ino paid attention to that fight. I don't like thinking about bad what-if scenarios if any future missions of ours go south. Kushina leaned back on her bed. She does rely on weapons a bit too much, the redhead thought quietly. Still, I can trust Guy into training her right. Retrieving her weapons, Tenten made her way up the stairs to the balcony. She was greeted by Naruto, Sakura, and Lee. Good job, Ten-chan. Tenten smirked. She was just all talk. Tenten. They winced at Guy shouting at full volume. Tears streamed down from his eyes. I am so proud of you, my youthful blooming flower. You have taken one more step towards becoming a great kunoichi. He pointed dramatically at the horizon he was seeing in his mind. Once Niji wins, we shall all take a triumphant 100 laps celebration around Konoha. Do that yourself. Tenten was not afraid on calling out on her teachers' ridiculous antics, but Tenten Lee joined his teacher. It is important we bond in both defeat and victory. And then Guy continued, we shall train for the finals. We'll start light. I'm thinking using the 50-pound weights on the first day. Count on Guy to have more enthusiasm and energy than most teenagers. Kakashi weakly chuckled while the rest sweat dropped at the odd man's antics as Kin was whisked away by the medics. The next match got everyone's attention as two names came up: Naruto Uzumaki versus Dosu King Yuta both Genin glared hard at one another, feeling a hand on his shoulder. Naruto glanced to Sakura. Be careful, the blonde winks before turning and being face to face with Sasuke. Neither say anything before the Uchiha smirked. Don't lose. Naruto smirked back before walking down the steps. I do have to kick your ass in the finals. After all, Sakura only deadpans at her teammates. Boys, the Oto Jounin smirked as Dosu glanced at him before leaping over the railing. Impress me some more, Naruto-kun. Normally Shikamaru was all for calm and quiet, but Ino not saying as much as a word since waking up was actually starting to bug him. What's on your mind, Ino? The blonde Kunoichi said nothing as she kept her eyes on the arena. Has Naruto really changed? Sure, he actually dressed better and was around Sasuke's height now, looking like he ate more than just ramen. But wasn't he still just the same old Naruto? At that, her teammate shrugged. No idea, that got him a light glare. Sure, Choji and I spoke to him a bit during the academy, but that was about it. Haven't really spoken or seen him since graduation. Ino lightly huffed before looking back down to the arena. Asuma said nothing as he had heard a few things from his father and Kakashi. Just watch and see, Ino. Naruto might just surprise you. Who are these Oto guys anyway? The redhead asked in curiosity. They weren't around back in my day. It felt odd to refer to what to her was just a few days ago as her day. Yugao shrugged. Some minor village that's on the rise. Not a lot of info on them, honestly. They're barely a threat to anyone. What we do know is that their shinobi are very ruthless, more so than the average ninja. Kushina's gaze is steely as he son and that Oto Genin soon stand at the arena center. Kick that mummy man's ass, Sochi. You look like shit, Naruto snarked as he glared at Dosu. The Oto Genin taps his bandaged chest. I intend to return the favor, Uzumaki. You're welcome to try. Naruto Uzumaki versus Dosu. King Yuta fight. Naruto wasted no time, immediately going through the hand signs motions. He planted his right foot forward, sending a trail of crystals which grew out like spikes from the ground directly at Dosu. The bandaged Genin made no attempt to evade. He merely brought his gauntlet arm in front of him and delivered a sweeping strike. The moment the crystals were close, the blonde's blue eyes widened as he broke through them with that one move, leaving broken pieces on the ground. What was his gauntlet made of materials that strong that they could shatter his shoton with ease. The Oto Genin shot forward with blurring speed. His armed hand brought to bear. Naruto quickly formed a staff and brought it down on his enemy. The sound Genin blocked it with his arm, making the crystal crack before breaking the staff in half with a palm strike from his left hand. Dosu quickly followed suit with a knee attack straight for the stomach. Naruto's thin crystal protection beneath his clothes resisted, but the impact was enough to send waves of pain around his midsection. Yet Naruto could still hear a very faint sound, almost like that of a whistle, as Dosu threw another punch. The blonde reacted fast and grabbed his arm, twisting his body as he threw the sound knee over his shoulder. But he avoided being slammed into the ground and broke free, jumping back to gain some distance with several hand signs from Naruto. Crystal hummingbirds soon formed and shot forward towards his opponent. Dosu swiped his arm. As soon as the crystal constructs were within range, they broke down and fell to the ground in pieces. He had not even touched them. Naruto's suspicions were confirmed. That ringing he heard in Dosu had to be using some kind of sound technique and a frequency that could shatter his crystals. Getting his crystals close to him would not be very effective in the long run, and trying to get close himself would also put him at risk, as he figured Dosu could perform techniques that would horribly damage his ear if his proficiency with his sound techniques was as good as he feared. Crossing his fingers, Naruto summoned 4 clones that quickly surrounded the sound nin, charging at him from all sides. 4 different strikes stopped him in his tracks, but his body bursted into smoke, revealing a log. His clones look on in surprise as a kunai embedded itself on the clone. A bomb tag strapped to it. It lit up and the clones were obliterated with the blast. Looking at all sides, Naruto tried to find where Dosu had disappeared. His senses screamed danger as he heard a noise from above. Dosu was hanging upside down from the ceiling and had thrown various bombs at him. Rather than fire, light came from them in a blinding burst, making Naruto cry out in pain as he tightly shut his eyes and pressed a hand against his face, trying to ease the burning sensation the light had produced. He grunted as he struggled to open them. Everything was now a blur. Dosu descended from the ceiling with great speed and delivered a drop kick that knocked out Naruto's breath and forced him on his back. Naruto managed to react fast enough to use his hands and hold back the second foot, which nearly crushed his throat. Dosu sneered under his bandages, "One of us is going to die today." Uzumaki question is though, "Can you kill me before I kill you?" Niji narrowed his eyes, watching the match intensely. The Oto has been going for a killing blow against Uzumaki since their match started. He glanced briefly over to Hinata, who was watching the match intensely. Shino adjusted his glasses. They're even skill-wise, so it can go either way. Yujito lightly tapped the railing. He's goading Naruto. Samui nodded along with Kakashi, who overheard. "Once I go to the finals," he smiled sadistically behind his bandages, "I am going to Kill each and every last one. He put more force behind his foot with each word. Naruto gagged at the pressure of your friends. The Uzumaki glared with rage-filled eyes. The blur was gone, and he could clearly see the face of his enemy. He could see in his eyes just how deep that twisted sense of satisfaction when hurting others, killing people, making others suffer just because it amused him. Just like Dosu grabbed the blonde's head and began honing the frequency of his gauntlet to pierce his eardrums. He'd make him suffer before him. Finally, one of Naruto's hands released Dosu's foot and grabbed the gauntlet. What it didn't make sense a moment ago. He was struggling to keep his windpipe from being crushed, and now he could feel how he was starting to push him with just one hand. He swore he saw the Uzumaki's blue eyes flash red for a moment. Naruto growled in anger. People like him pissed him off so much, bragging about how much pain they'd bring, acting like they were above consequences, toying with lives like nothing. Already they had tried to kill his friends before. He wouldn't let it happen again. A spike of crystal shoots from his hand and pierced the gauntlet, cutting through skin and muscle, drawing a pained gargle from the bandaged ninja. Then Naruto pushed him away with such force Dosu rolled on the ground for a few feet. The Otonin hissed as he pulled out the spike of crystal out his arm and got to his feet. He growled, seeing his ruined gauntlet. People like you, Naruto growled out. You're worse than scum. Dosu had zero time to react as the blonde vanished and reappeared in front of him with a dark crimson version of the Rasengan in hand. Shui Rasengan ramming his jutsu in the same spot as before, but with more hellish intensity. Dosu screamed in agony before being fired off like a spiraling cannonball into the wall with such force he's embedded deep within the cement. Garo looked wide-eyed. What did he just feel just now? That chakra was like. Jiraiya looked wide-eyed. A Rasengan infused with the Kyuubi's chakra. His eyes looked over to the Oto Genin, now motionless with a large circular hole in his chest where his heart should be. Results speak for themselves. The proctor glanced at Naruto, whose eyes were shadowed by his bangs. Winner by fatality. Naruto Uzumaki. His breathing was a slow pant as Naruto lifted his head. His cerulean eyes were slit for a millisecond before turning back to normal. He said nothing as he stared at the lifeless body of his opponent. He didn't know, he couldn't say he didn't want this. Dosu had threatened his friends, nearly killed them before, and was going to do it with a goddamned smile on his face. Naruto wanted him gone. He wanted to kill him. He had been angry, yes, but this wasn't like that time on the bridge where the rage and the surge of power had blinded him. This had been his choice. He had a clear enough head to know this was what he had wanted to do. Did he regret it? No, Naruto couldn't say he did, but still, to have killed him like this so gruesomely and so mercilessly, at gods, it left a very bad taste on his mouth. He tried to steel himself in the face of it all, ignoring the looks of shock and even fear among some of the spectators. He took a deep breath and let it all go. He was a ninja now. This was the life he chooses. Hiruzen tipped his hat. This life is hard, Naruto, and the killing is never easy, my boy. Living with it can be even harder. As much as I'd rather you never stain your hands with blood, you made the decision to become a ninja. Why, I know you will overcome it like a true shinobi. Kiba was several shades paler as he gawked. Damn, Akamaruan barked lightly. Okay, so Naruto maybe really had changed since the academy, but damn, that was brutal. Hinata's eyes were wide as she covered her mouth. Shino's eyes narrowed at the scene. Ino and Shikamaru only looked at the scene with a touch of fear upon seeing one their graduation classmates kill someone in front of them. Glad Choji is still out. He might have thrown up. Shikamaru mentally muttered. A very cold chill went up the Yamanaka's spine. Is he really the same? Naruto Zabuza on his part gave a small nod of approval and a notch of respect for the kid, least having the willingness to kill an enemy. No hesitation, and he's not shaking hope for this generation. After all, Kohei and Kojuru both only grimaced at the sight. Zabuza-sensei made damn sure they were used to killing enemies during some missions against bandits, as unpleasant as it was part of shinobi life, and they had accepted it. Haku only gazed down at the blonde Uzumaki with understanding and empathy radiating from her warm eyes. You did it to protect those precious to you. Never forget that. Naruto-kun. The Oto Jounin's smile grew more malicious. Magnificent Kumo remained indifferent. With their more militaristic upbringing having been drilled into them, made the group adjusted to killing Sakura, and Sasuke only looked to their blonde teammate as Kakashi was now by his side. The Jounin placed his hand on his student's shoulder. Naruto, his voice quiet, calm. It doesn't get easier, does it? The blonde asked quietly, his eyes fixed on the corpse of Dosu being pulled out from the wall. As Jounin-sensei let out a small breath. I don't think it's supposed to. When it does, that's when we stop being human and become the very thing we hate. Kakashi's ANBU days taught him that lesson harshly. Both heading up the balcony, Naruto Sakura called out to him in concern. You okay yet? He breathed out, watching as they removed Dosu's body in a body bag. I'll be fine. Sasuke grunted. He actively tried to kill you before us, and so you killed him. It was fitting. It's more complicated than that, the blonde refuted. I didn't want him to hurt you, any of you. The Uchiha still believed in the self-preservation aspect of it all, but the need to protect something, well, that was not something he was familiar with. Understood it perhaps, but no, he couldn't say he had felt The same before Sasuke lived for the chance at killing him. It never crossed his mind to risk his life and bring an end to others because they threatened something important to him. He didn't have any important left in his life. Onyx eyes stared at the rest of his team, at Sakura and Kakashi Man, who were currently accompanying Naruto in this trying time. While they had been lost in their own personal moment, the new names had been selected without them realizing. Oh no, Tenten muttered in dread. Naruto and his teammates frowned in confusion. Was one of the contenders Gaara had been selected to fight against one of their peers? A look at the name revealed to them that was not the case, yet it did not make the situation any less worrisome. Neji Hyuga vs Hinata. Hyuga shit. The Jinchuriki's eyes widened as he looked at the Hyugas in question. Hinata was her fidgety self, looking more afraid than ever. Neji's gaze seemed to have gained an edge to it. Not Kumo then, he said, seemingly disregarding the prospect that Hinata was his opponent. Disappointing, and was about to jump down until his sensei stopped him. Neji's tone was so serious, without any of the excitable jubilation or energy nearly always found in his voice. His face was set in stone. He was acting so out of character it was honestly frightening. Remember, self-control, discipline. This is just another fight. If the Hyuga took his words into consideration, he did not show it. He had merely paused in his steps momentarily before jumping down to the arena. Hinata nervously held her hands in front of her chest. The poor girl looked like she did not know what to do. Hinata, the warm tone of her teacher made her turn to see her kind eyes and smile. She grasped her hands gently. You can do this. Hell yeah. Kiba cheered her on. He's just an arrogant ass. You are just as capable of achieving victory. Shino added, why? Because you two are very skilled. The words of encouragement from her friends seemed to invigorate her, filling her with the confidence she lacked. Come on, Hinata. Naruto threw his support as well, offering her his typical smile. You can do it. His efforts seemed to have worked as Hinata smiled softly and nodded her gratitude to her friends and comrades. She hopped down from stands to the arena. Though encouraged, she couldn't shake off the feelings of doubt and hesitation. She didn't want to fight. Neji Kushina gripped the sheets tightly, fighting down every urge and instinct she had of going right there and hugging the two kids with all the strength she could muster. One more death. She was told about another friend dead. Hisashi, she muttered mournfully, all because of fucking Kumo once again playing their hand, making demands they had no rights to. She blamed everyone, Kumo for their transgression, the Hyuga elders too arrogant and stuck in their ways, seeing Hisashi's death as preferable, at Sarutobi for just bowing head to that village's ridiculous demands. Blaming someone made the pain easier to bear, much like young Neji was most likely doing right now. Both Hyuga stood in front of each other. Hinata's gaze was one of sympathy and acceptance at what was going to happen. Neji's, on the other, had the way he looked at her. He hates her. Sasuke muttered him. Sakura turned to him in confusion. Look at how he's looking at her. That's hatred in his eyes. Naruto realized Sasuke was right. Those eyes, that gaze was similar to the one some of the villagers would give him sometimes, one that carried pain and anger directed at someone they believed was the source, someone they could blame. Naruto knew Neji hated the main house of the Hyuga, but he actually hated Hinata too. She was just a child when the tragedy happened, so had nearly been a victim of a kidnapping attempt, but Neji didn't care to. Neji Hinata was embodiment of all he hated. Heiei raised his hand. Neji Hyuga vs Hinata. Hyuga begin. Neji didn't hesitate to take down his cousin, running forward and throwing a fast striking palm at Hinata. Though even with his ruthless intentions to destroy his cousin, he was not going to destroy her so easily, as she ducked under the strike and swung her arm up against his side, their arms becoming a flurry of movement matching her speed. Neji turned his body back into the side, dodging the brunt of her strike and fluidly striking with his other arm, hitting her dead on in the ribs with 2 fingers. Hinata ignored the pain as she drew back from the strike and smacks his arm to the side, stepping forward with a powerful palm thrust to his chest. This was a shock to Neji, who expected her to yell out from his strike and back off, only to be taken by surprise and blast by a powerful wave of chakra to his chest and making him step back unbalanced and almost falling from the sudden push. Before he could recover, Hinata was on him again, this time going for a double strike into his stomach. Neji slammed his hands down onto Hinata's arms, using them as leverage to get his feet. His cousin's strike now deflected, he struck her shoulder as hard as he could with his palm, making in pain, ready to receive his next 2 strikes, one into her other shoulder and the other into her arm, which was coming up to toss his first 2-finger strike off her. His pinpoint strikes causing some damage as she held her arm close, backing off. So that's the Hyuga's taijutsu style, Sakura said out loud. Leave spook up. It's called Juken, a truly deadly combination. Their dojutsu with their ability to close off chakra points with their strikes. They witnessed as Hinata struck her own arm, reawakening said points, going on the offensive. Neji strikes with vigor with blasts of chakra coming from his palms, Though Hinata was somehow more skilled than he originally predicted, she smacked his first strike away before spinning under his next strike and blocking the third, aiming for her head, throwing her own up to his chin. Kurenai lightly bit the tip of her thumb, dodging the strike at his neck. He swings under it and throws his next strike into her arm that was aimed to hit him. The counter-attack Niji gave Hinata effectively stopped her from hitting him full on, but with a chakra-infused strike grazing his arm, she did the damage she wanted before smacking the arm away from her, though the strike to her upper arm made it spasm from the movement and she gasped in pain, backing off and holding her arm, relaxing it to let it calm down, though this was a bad move on her part to stop her assault as Niji came in full force with a flurry of pinpoint strikes to her arms and shoulders, cutting into her with devastating and powerful chakra-infused finger attacks. With a final thrust of his palm, Niji blasted Hinata back, making her fall. Blood hits the ground as the young heiress coughs heavily for her older cousin. He lightly catches his breath. Niji shook his head. Your skills have improved, Hinata-sama, but the results are still the same. A failure cannot change, that's your fate. Niji's eyes only widen as Hinata slowly stands back to her feet. Blood drips from her lips as her left hand holds her chest. Her breath's raspy and shallow as her eyes look just as determined. A far cry from the shy girl. Misanai. No, you hate me. Hinata covers her mouth as she coughs, lowering her hand. She looks mournfully at her cousin. She was struggling to remain standing and was a breeze away from fainting. But I want you to know I love you and admire you greatly, and I-san, you're my family. Those words snap something in Niji's mind as his fists clench. Family, what a joke. The main house had no concept of what that word meant to Niji. The words that came out from her were nothing but insults and jeers thrown at his direction. And the entire branch house's calm mask shattered, showing absolute rage. He sprints forward with his right two fingers raised, ready to strike down his own flesh and blood. The Hyuga was stopped in his advance by Hayate, holding him back enough. The proctor ordered, watching as Hinata hit the ground. She's already defeated. The winner is Niji. Hyuga Kurenai was at her side, immediately accompanied by Kiba and Shino holding the girl in her arms. Are you alright? Hinata rasped for breath. Did I do good? Sensei. Her sensei was both sad and proud. You did amazing. Hinata could only smile through bloodied lips before coughing up more blood. Medic Nin now moving away to let the medics do their thing. Naruto came down to the floor and glared over to Niji. You were going to kill her, he accused. Really, Uzumaki? He condescendingly retorted. You are going to lecture me about killing an opponent? Though those words did in fact affect him, Naruto did not let it show. She's your cousin and you were just going to kill her when she was clearly about to fall down. The fight continued on. I merely exercised my right to make sure she was down. The Inuzuka snarled with all the fury of a wolf, taking a threatening stop forward along with Naruto before both were stopped by Shino, who put his hands on their shoulders. A time and a place. Kiba. Naruto-san, the Aburame spoke calm as ever. Both boys were forced to swallow their anger. One way or another, I am fighting you in the third exam, and I swear I am going beat your ass. The blonde promised. Hinata did not deserve the hatred her cousin directed at her. You can try. Uzumaki with the final word. The Hyuga made his way back to the stands where he casually endured the accusing gaze of his teammates. Guy looked at him with something beyond disappointment. I did not teach you this. You're right on that account, Sensei. His tone expressed he held little respect for his so-called teacher. After all, you only focus on Lee. I learned nothing from you, but I did not need to anyway. Niji Ten growled out. I thought you were better than this. Lee could only look sadly. No more than ever they could feel how much they had utterly failed to reach his teammate. The fact Niji looked like he didn't even care what any of them thought of him told them how true that was.